At the beginning, a boy was seen leaving a shop while saying that he would get going then. The staff thanked him for his hard work and addressed him as Hisamura. The boy started running while thinking that he had to hurry, because today was the day he had waited a long time for her. While running and huffing, he thought that right now he had a huge crush on a girl. He saw a store and thought that she had short silver hair, while her upturned eyes gave off a slightly cold aura. Inside the store, he thought that she really cared about others, and when he saw something, he happily exclaimed that he had found it. With a happy expression, he said it was Sei-chan's merch. Holding the merchandise, he thought that Sei Shimada was a character in the hottest rom-com manga right now, Ojojama. He thought about how the story started with the MC, Yuichi, falling in love with the main heroine, Shiho, after meeting her in high school. However, Yuichi's wealthy childhood friend, Kaori, also had a crush on him, and she used the power her family wielded to interfere in their relationship as much as possible. He recalled that from Shiho growing more and more fond of the MC to the twisted Kaori, trying to take the MC for her own, a myriad of characters all put together a lively and popular manga. He thought that the fragile but interesting love triangle had received widespread commendation. He also thought that in classic rom-com manga, there were always side girls who accompanied the main heroines. One of them was his waifu, a close friend to Shiho, the main girl, Sei Shimada, commonly known as the losing heroine. Later, Hisamura was walking on the street while thinking that most people probably fell in love with one of the main heroines and supported her. They must have been holding their breaths to see who the winner would be. While holding the merchandise, he smiled and thought that it was not good, because he should not act like such a pervert when there were people around. He hid it in his bag and said with a happy expression that thanks to the anime adaptation, Sei-chan had a lot more merchandise now. Suddenly, when he turned his face, he saw a truck in front of him and thought in shock that there was no way. He wondered if he was about to die. He saw the big truck and thought that he was on the sidewalk, so perhaps the driver was sleeping. He felt that everything seemed to be going in slow motion now. He thought that he did not want to die yet. Although deep down, he knew Sei-chan's love would forever be unrequited. Even so, he thought he was just a high school student and had not seen the end of Ojojama yet. He still wanted to witness the story all the way until the end. He thought there were still a lot of things he wanted to do and a lot to explore, along with his endless future. The truck then crashed into him, and the scene shifted. The boy thought, while holding his face and opening his eyes, saying what was going on, since his head felt heavy. He found himself walking in a school hallway, asking where he was. He noticed it was a school but thought that his school was not like this. He looked at his uniform and thought it looked different as well. When he touched his body, he remembered that a truck had just hit him. With a shuddering expression, he sighed and thought that he should calm down first. He wondered what on earth was happening. He thought that perhaps he had already fallen into a coma in reality because of the injury, and so he might be in a dream right now. From a room nearby, Hisamura heard someone speaking about Sei-chan. Another voice mentioned that Shiho was always hesitating about that. Hisamura's expression turned to shock as he thought of Sei-chan and Shiho, along with the voices he had heard countless times in drama CDs. He realized they were Shiho Fujise and Sei Shimada from Ojojama. Shiho said that Yuichi-kun had to have Join-san by his side, and she was worried she would just be a bother to the two of them. Hisamura thought in disbelief that he was witnessing this scene with his own eyes. Sei responded that it had nothing to do with Tojoin, and that the most important thing was how Shiho felt. Shiho asked how she felt, and Hisamura thought this was the scene where Shiho was wondering whether she should go on a date with Yuichi after he invited her. Watching them from the door with excitement, he thought that since Yuichi had a cute childhood friend called Kaori Tojoin, Shiho was considering whether it was better for her to turn down his offer. He recalled that the person who encouraged Shiho to make the final decision was Sei. Sei asked if Shiho loved Shigemoto, and Shiho replied yes. Sei encouraged her, saying that she should work even harder, because if Yuichi was inviting her to a date, then that meant she absolutely had a chance. Shiho agreed and, with a smile, thanked Sei for coming to talk to her before running off. Sei told her to do her best. Hisamura then heard Shiho's departing words, encouraging herself to give it her all, along with Sei's as well. Hisamura thought that this was his favorite scene, the interlude that made him fall in love with Sei Shimada. With tears in his eyes, he thought that Sei-chan also had a crush on the MC, Shigemoto. Even though Sei was annoyed that Shiho was constantly approached by Shigemoto at first, Sei slowly developed feelings for him after countless interactions. However, at the same time, Sei also knew Shiho liked Shigemoto as well. That was why Sei decided to be their wingwoman, so that Shiho and Shigemoto could be together. Seeing Sei's tears, Hisamura thought that she had forced her own feelings to die in the crib. That was how he had fallen in love with Sei-chan, because she could be sincere about the feelings of her friends. Sei then turned and asked who was there before opening the door, and addressing him as Hisamura. She asked if he had heard their conversation. Hisamura was on the ground, stunned, and thought that Sei-chan was right in front of him. He apologized, saying he had not meant to eavesdrop, but immediately thought about why he had started talking. In shock, he wondered why Sei had called him Hisamura. He realized it was not exactly the same, because this whole string of events did occur in the original, yet the line that suddenly came out of his mouth belonged to one of the characters in Ojo-jama. He thought in disbelief if he was now Tsukasa Hisamura. He recalled that Tsukasa Hisamura was one of the characters in Ojo-jama, a good friend of the MC, Yuichi Shigemoto. This character always tried to lighten up the mood whenever Shigemoto was bothered by his love triangle, and he even gave proper suggestions sometimes. He was a very important side character who had no involvement in the relationships. Hisamura thought that he could not believe they shared the same first and last name, that their bodies and voices were really similar too, and that Tsukasa was one of his favorite characters as well. He insisted that he was not imitating him but thought that although this was a dream, it was too lucky since he was actually watching his favorite scene from a first-class seat. He thought with excitement that his best girl had even called his name. He then found himself speaking lines again, asking Shiho if she was fine with this, because Shimada was also in love with Yuichi. Hisamura thought in shock that he had started talking on his own once again and wondered if this would continue until the end of the story. Sei, with a sad expression, said that this would do, since she had already investigated whether Shigemoto suited Shiho. With a smile, she added that she did not have a place between them, since they were a match made in heaven. Hisamura was shocked, blushing as he thought about Sei-chan's beautiful and considerate smile toward her friends. He thought that her expressions made him fall in love with her, but that was also the same smile that killed her own feelings. He gripped his hand tightly and thought that the last thing he wanted was for her to show such a sad smile if her body was covered in wounds just for loving the MC. He thought that he would turn this story where she could not be happy and then confess to her, saying he loved her and asking her to go out with him. With a blushing face, he thought that the happiness of the character they loved was the happiness that otakus yearned for. Sei was shocked and blushing, responding with disbelief. Hisamura said that he loved her kindness toward her friends the most, that he really liked how cool Sei-chan looked, and that her short, silver hair made her look both handsome and pretty. Blushing and flustered, Sei asked him to wait, saying that the name Sei-chan was something he had never called her before. She pointed out that Hisamura had never addressed her that way until now. Hisamura thought in shock that she was way too cute, acting embarrassed right before him. He thought this dream was the best reward ever, since she had felt like an NPC until then, yet now they were having a normal chat, and he could even confess his love to her. Convinced this was his only chance, Hisamura prepared to tell her all his feelings. He continued, shouting that he loved how gentle Sei-chan was, how much she cared about Fujise, and that she even investigated Shigemoto for her. He shouted that falling in love with someone after being with them for some time made Sei-chan too easy, but that it was very cute and he loved that too. He shouted again that what he liked most about Sei-chan was how she tried to suppress her feelings for the good of her friends. Sei blushed hard, asking if he was trying to make her angry. Hisamura replied that he did not like her doing that, with a dark expression. Sei addressed him in shock, and Hisamura told her that she would not be happy if this went on. Blushing, Sei said that she did not want to hear that from him. Hisamura walked toward her, saying that was why he would make her happy. With a blushing face, Sei reacted in shock. Hisamura repeated his confession, saying he loved her, that he would definitely make her happy, and asking her to go out with him. Sei was left blushing in shock. Hisamura thought about how Sei-chan was the losing heroine in Ojo-jama, and that since the manga was not over yet, the story would go on. He thought that Sei's love would remain unrequited as long as the two heroines remained, but he wanted her to be happy. He thought that he did not care about Tsukasa Hisamura's character at all if it meant achieving that. It was because he did not want to see Sei-chan's heartbreaking smile or her being so upset anymore. Sei, shaking and shouting, asked if he was serious about dating her. Hisamura replied with determination that of course he was, and he could even sacrifice his life if it was for Sei-chan. He thought to himself that he was a simp who had wasted all his money on Sei-chan's merchandise. Sei, blushing and flustered, asked him to wait, wondering aloud if he was always the kind of person to say things like that. She walked back nervously, and Hisamura told her that Sei-chan was the one responsible for turning him into this. Sei, panicking, said he was trying to scare her by saying those things again. Just then, Sei tripped, and Hizumura warned her to watch out. There was a clattering sound, and Hizumura ended up hugging her with one arm. Their heartbeats were loud, and their faces were close. Hizumura apologized nervously, and Sei told him not to worry about it. Sweating and blushing, Hizumura thought he was so close to her that he could directly feel the warmth of her body and that he could see all of her long eyelashes clearly, with her big round eyes sucking him in. Sei, blushing, thought that she did not want this moment to end. Hizumura, thinking it was a dream, wondered if it was okay to be a bit more aggressive. He asked Sei what her answer was. Sei, surprised, asked what he meant by answer. Hizumura clarified that he was talking about his confession. Sei, embarrassed, suggested they could talk about her answer later. Hizumura refused, saying he wanted to know now. Sei, blushing and flustered, said he was too close. Hizumura asked if it was a no and thought that since it was a dream, it was fine even if he was rejected, but he would spend his whole life regretting it if he woke up before knowing her answer. He told her he would not let go before she answered him. Sei, hiding her blushing face, complained that he was being difficult and wondered if he had always been like this. Hizumura asked what she thought and whether it was okay for him to become Sei-chan's boyfriend. Sei, still blushing hard and avoiding eye contact, admitted that she thought Hizumura was a very nice guy and that it was not like he could not be her boyfriend. Hizumura pressed further, asking if she was willing to go out with him and willing to be his girlfriend. Sei, blushing very hard, stuttered before finally pushing him away and shouting that she could not. She ran off from the classroom, declaring that she was going home. Hizumura, left on the floor, thought in frustration that she had run away. He stood up and said that at the very least, he should let her know his feelings. He slammed open the door and shouted to Sei that he was serious, and that his love for her would not change even if he was not the one next to her. He thought that even if he woke up and went back to the real world now, he had to say it. When Sei turned, Hizumura shouted that he loved her so much and would absolutely make her happy. Sei, blushing, reacted in shock. Hizumura thought to himself that he was sure he would continue to support her. Sei, pointing at him while blushing, demanded to know what he was saying out loud and told him she would think about his confession, so he should shut up. She then ran away blushing. Hizumura admitted that he did not get her answer but thought that Sei-chan was way too cute. With a smile, he picked up his bag and decided that he should go home for now. But then he stopped and wondered when he could wake up. He thought about where he should even go back to before suddenly dropping his bag in shock as he wondered if he was waking up. Then the scene shifts, and we see Sei's hair come into view, and Hizumura thought that it was short hair. Some girls greeted her with a cheerful good morning, and Hizumura observed that Sei was taller than the average girl. Sei responded with a casual good morning, and Hizumura thought that she was not the same as most manga heroines, who were cute and petite girls with long hair. From behind, someone called out to her with Sei-chan, and it turned out to be Shiho. Hizumura thought that she was like a beautiful best friend of hers. Shiho greeted Sei with a smile, and Sei also returned the greeting with a smile. Shiho reminded Sei that she had told her online yesterday, but it was thanks to Sei that she got to go on a date with Shigemoto-kun. Sei responded that she did not do anything and that it went well because Shiho had worked very hard. Sei reflected that, indeed, all she had done was investigate Shiho's one-sided crush. Shigemoto, the boy Shiho was going on a date with, was rumored to have a childhood friend fiancé. However, further investigation proved that this was not true at all. All Sei had done was give Shiho a push so that she would not back away from her rival in love. The feelings that Shigemoto and Shiho had for each other were dazzling to the point that Sei felt like she was reading a manga. Sei wanted to support her best friend's first love however she could. Sei then thought of Hizumura's face and thought of love, causing her to blush. Shiho noticed and asked Sei if something had happened yesterday. Sei blushed again, and Shiho pointed out that her reaction made it obvious. Shiho noted that Sei always replied right away when she texted online, but Sei had been slow yesterday, so she knew something was strange. Sei, with a blushing face, apologized for that as well. Shiho then observed Sei's expression and speculated if someone had confessed to her. Sei blushed even more, and Shiho insisted that Sei could not deceive her eyes and should tell her all about it. Sei called out Shiho's name in embarrassment. The scene then shifted to the girls' washroom, where Shiho, with a surprised face, said Hizumura-kun's name and remarked that she saw how it was. She admitted that she had been thinking Sei and Hizumura had been talking a lot lately. Sei, blushing, felt troubled. Shiho then asked if Sei would go out with him. Sei replied that she still had not answered him. Shiho was surprised and asked why. Sei, blushing, explained that she could not go out with him just because he confessed to her. Shiho then asked if Sei had someone else she liked. Sei repeated the question, "Someone I like," and thought that Shigemoto should have been the first person that came to mind when asked that. Despite his clumsiness, she had developed feelings for him before she knew it after seeing his single-minded love towards Shiho. However, the person that came to her mind at that moment was she stopped herself, blushing, and quickly said that she did not have anyone on her mind. Shiho smiled and responded that she understood but asked how Sei had felt when Hisumura confessed to her. Sei admitted while blushing that she had felt very happy. She thought to herself that she used to think she was not suited to love. But even so, when Hisumura, who was also a comrade who cherished his friends, made such a passionate confession, it had been like a once-in-a-lifetime event for her. She had felt like she was in a fairy tale. There was no way she would not feel happy. She then thought of Hisumura's face again, blushing, and scolded herself for remembering something she was not supposed to. She realized it was because of Hisumura spitting out those shoujo manga lines like it was nothing, and there was no way for her to forget that. Shiho laughed and said that Sei was too cute. Shiho told her that she did not think it was a bad thing to spend some time and think about it, because that was more like how Sei usually did things. Sei questioned if Shiho was trying to make fun of her. Shiho, while stepping out, explained that it was because she was really happy about the fact that she could talk about love with Sei. Shiho added that she was going to confess during her date and even suggested that if it went well, they could have a double date. Sei, seeing Shiho's smile, thought that hearing about Shigemoto from Shiho no longer hurt. Perhaps her feelings for Shigemoto had been suppressed unconsciously due to Shiho's presence. Sei remarked that Shiho was hasty and the two of them walked away. Sei reflected that she felt like she had been blown away by Hisumura's confession. The scene then shifted to Hisumura's house. Hisumura was in his bed with a plain face, thinking that it was bad news because he did not seem to be waking up from his dream. As he walked downstairs with a yawn, he thought that it was strange because he should have been back in the real world after a day of sleep. He thought that right now he was in the world of his favorite manga. In his dream, he had seen himself acting as the manga character with the exact same name as he did, Tsukasa Hisumura. Then, he had been able to move on his own suddenly. Somehow, he had managed to make it to his home and even had dinner, which was really tasty. He thought that was too real for a dream. He concluded that entering a manga's world was impossible, no matter how he thought about it. While washing his face, Hisumura thought that the taste of food, the feeling of washing his face, and seeing his reflection in the mirror were so real that he found it hard to believe he was in a manga. As he dressed up, he thought that it had been vague until yesterday, but now he had the memory of Tsukasa Hisumura. He wondered if he really had died after getting hit by the truck. He concluded that if he had completely become Tsukasa Hisumura, then he could not go back to the real world anymore. He told himself he had no choice but to live in this world. He reflected that the things he wanted to do, his family, and his friends had all been left in the previous world. Normally, he would have been full of regret and grief. When he opened his closet and kneeled down, he suddenly shouted in his mind that he had thought this was a dream, so he had confessed to Sei-chan. He lamented that he was doing something completely irrelevant. He questioned if he had really said things like, "I'll make you happy," and "I'll never let go of you." He felt sorry for being carried away and worried that Sei must think he was a very disgusting guy right now. He feared that she might hate him. He imagined Sei telling him that even though he had helped her before, suddenly hugging and confessing to her over and over again was disgusting, and that she wanted him not to come near her again. Tears flowed as Hisumura thought about whether he could have another chance, wishing he could reset the time he entered the world to today. He groaned that he did not really want to act like nothing had happened after getting the chance to come there and talk to Sei-chan for the first time. Crying, he admitted aloud that even if he wanted to forget what he had done and said, it was going to be very awkward when they saw each other at school. As he performed a chakra asana, he shouted in despair, asking what he should even do. Then, the door opened, and someone pointed out that he had been making a fuss for a while. While he was still in the chakra asana pose, the voice reminded him that he would be late for school if he did not hurry up. Hisumura responded that he understood and called her Ri. He thought to himself that there was actually another side heroine besides Sei-chan in. Ri then handed him his bento and called him Oni-chan. Hisumura recognized her as Tsukasa Hisumura's little sister, Ri Hisumura. He thanked her for always being there for him. Ri looked confused, asking what he was talking about. Hisumura, while sobbing, told her he was glad to have such a cute little sister. Ri, alarmed, asked what he meant. Hisumura thought that Ri Hisumura was a kuhai heroine whom Tsukasa Hisumura had met in the manga. Ri was one of the most popular characters in the polls, and of course, he was a fan of her as well. However, now that he had the memory of Tsukasa Hisamura, rather than seeing her as a character he loved, it felt more like she was a little sister whom he cherished. Rie asked what was wrong with him, and Hisamura thought that he was pretty sure Rie was confirmed to be a losing heroine in the original manga too, which was why he could not help but wish for her to be happy. He patted Rie's head, causing her to react in surprise. Hisamura smiled and told her that she was adorable and that he was sure she would be happy. Rie blushed, asking what had happened to him. As she stood up, she told him to stop messing around because it was time to leave for school. Hisamura agreed and told her not to be mad. Rie, with a sulking face, said it was not like she was mad. Hisamura thought to himself that his little sister was indeed very cute and that she was hiding her embarrassment by acting angry, just like in the manga. He acknowledged that, along with his memories, his emotions would slowly become more familiar with this world. As they walked, Hisamura thought that he would be lying if he said he had no regrets from his previous world, but the important thing right now was his little sister and, above all, facing his confession to Sei-chan sincerely. He told himself he would never turn that confession into his black history. When they arrived at school, Hisamura told Rie to do her best. Rie told him to do his best too. Hisamura then noticed someone and recognized him. His eyes glowed as he approached the person and greeted him as Yuichi while grabbing his shoulder. Yuichi looked shocked, and Hisamura realized that he had just greeted him as if they were actual childhood friends. He thought that this guy was the MC, Yuichi Shigemoto. Yuichi responded with Hisamura's name, Tsukasa. Hisamura thought that unlike most rom-com protagonists, Yuichi was a tall and popular guy from the basketball club. However, Hisamura noticed that Yuichi looked a little tired. Hisamura asked what was wrong and pointed out that Yuichi looked like he had just seen a ghost. Yuichi grabbed Hisamura's shoulder and, with desperation, asked him to please help him, calling it his once-in-a-lifetime request. Hisamura, shocked, thought only of the word "a." The scene then shifted, and Yuichi was sitting near the stairs. Hisamura, standing with a tense face, asked if Tojoin-san might have found out about Yuichi's date with Fujise. Yuichi, looking scared, said that it was over and that Kaori would get in their way if this kept up. Hisamura thought in shock, wondering if there was such a plot. He recalled that in the original manga, Tojoin-san did find out about the date and interrupted them. Hisamura then asked how Kaori had found out. Yuichi replied that he had no idea either and explained that Kaori had suddenly messaged him online yesterday and asked him about his plans on Sunday. Yuichi clicked his tongue in frustration, thinking it happened right after he finally got Fujisa's to say yes. With a tense face, he shouted that he would never be able to go out with her again if he missed this chance. Hisamura said that he did not think that was true and thought to himself that Yuichi was a rom-com MC after all. Hisamura then asked if Yuichi was trying to get him to help with something. Yuichi suddenly grabbed Hisamura's legs and begged him to help trick Kaori about when they were going out on a date. Hisamura immediately refused and shouted that he would like to help, but it was pretty much impossible. He said there was no way they could deceive Tojoin-san. Yuichi, still grabbing Hisamura's leg, pleaded once more, calling him his dear friend Tsukasa. Hisamura shouted again that it was impossible, no matter how many times Yuichi asked him, and with a tense face, he began to say that it was because she was. At that moment, someone suddenly said "Era" and walked up to them, commenting that the two of them seemed to be having a rather interesting chat. Hisamura, with a shocked face, thought that with her beautiful face and elegant voice, everyone, including herself, regarded her as a true young lady. Yuichi, still crying, looked up as the girl asked if it would be fine for her to join in. Hisamura thought to himself that she was Yuichi's childhood friend. The girl called out to Yuichi, and Yuichi, with a scared face, stammered out Kaori's name. Hisamura thought in shock that this was one of the main heroines in Kojo Jamas, Kaori Tojoin. Kaori greeted Yuichi and Hisamura kindly. Hisamura thought about how she was a dazzling quarter European who was also good at sports, and that she was in love with her childhood friend Yuichi. Furthermore, this high-spec heroine's father was the chairman of the Tojoin Group, a huge company that also ran their school. Her feelings had been fully demonstrated since kindergarten. The chairman's daughter had used all of her powers to completely eliminate any girls who got close to Yuichi. She was what they called a Yandere. Because of that, Yuichi thought he was ugly and believed girls did not like him. With a tense face, Hisamura greeted Tojoin-san politely. Yuichi, with a scared face, stammered out a good morning to Kaori. Hisamura thought to himself that he wanted to give Yuichi a push when he fell in love for the first time in high school, But then Kaori suddenly asked what the two of them had been talking about in such a quiet place. Hizumura turned to Yuichi nervously and said that it was something only the boys could talk about, something that could not be heard by girls. He thought to himself an apology to Yuichi, realizing all he could do here was go off topic. Yuichi, confused, then blurted out that Tsukasa had asked him whether they could see the girls' skirts from below. Hizumura quickly snapped back, telling him not to drag him into this. Kaori, surprised, asked if Yuichi really wanted to see what was inside their skirts so much. She walked up to him, touched his face, and said that she was preparing for Yuichi to attack her at any second, so she asked him to please tell her next time. Hizumura remarked that he was happy for Yuichi, then pushed him toward Kaori, declaring that he would be the future chairman of the Tojoin group. Yuichi shook Hizumura violently, calling him a traitor, while Hizumura thought to himself that they had at least managed to derail the conversation. Kaori suddenly smiled again and asked Yuichi if he had any plans for Sunday. Hizumura thought in surprise about how quickly she had returned to the original topic. Yuichi hesitated, saying something about clubs. Kaori quickly pointed out that the volleyball club was going to use the gym on Sunday. Yuichi, shocked, asked how she knew that. Kaori replied that it meant Yuichi really did not have any plans, right? Yuichi blushed and admitted that he did not have any plans for Sunday but wanted to take it easy with a break once in a while. Kaori, with a scary face, smirked and asked if that was so. Yuichi, scared, stammered in response. Kaori reminded him that he had said the night before, when the club activity was on break, that he had to practice as much as possible, so he did not have time to rest. Yuichi, shocked, asked how she had known that. Kaori, with a scary smile, asked Yuichi if he really needed a break. Both Yuichi and Hizumura were terrified. Kaori then said, "Fine," and turned away, stating that she had her own thoughts as well if Yuichi did not feel like talking. She bid Hizumura farewell and walked away. Hizumura, still scared, thought that, as expected of a rom-com main heroine, she was overwhelmingly powerful. He nervously said goodbye. Yuichi then grabbed Hizumura's shoulder with a scary face and called his name. Hizumura refused immediately, saying, "No way in hell." Yuichi begged him to stop. Kaori. Hizumura told him that was absurd and told him to have some common sense. The scene then shifted to classroom 2-3, where Yuichi continued to plead with Tsukasa, saying that it was his once-in-a-lifetime request. Hizumura, while opening the classroom door, told Yuichi not to waste his once-in-a-lifetime request on things like this. Hizumura thought that it was more like he did not have time for that right now. He thought that Sei-chan probably thought he was disgusting after that sudden confession yesterday. Because he thought it was a dream, he had gotten too hyped up and declared that he would make Sei-chan happy. He thought about what a boast that was, and even though he was serious, perhaps the burden was a little too heavy. As they walked in, Hizumura saw Sei, and thought that this was why he must first apologize for his sudden confession to Sei-chan, and then do his best to get along with her so that he could improve her impression of him. Sei saw Hizumura and quickly turned away. Hizumura thought in panic, wondering if he was finished here. Sei was blushing while Yuichi called Tsukasa's name. Hizumura muttered that he was dead. Yuichi, confused, asked what was wrong all of a sudden. Hizumura thought to himself in frustration that Yuichi was the MC and would definitely end up with one of the main heroines, while he himself was only a best friend character, nothing more than a little wingman to the MC's love life. He thought about how, in the original story, Tsukasa, Hizumura, and Sei-chan were more like partners who supported their best friends' relationships. He did not think he could be part of the stage of love, even if he tried. He also thought there was no way he could stop the wealthy young lady's scheme. He considered the possibility that the game might already be completely over at this point and wondered what he should do. Yuichi then suddenly called out Tsukasa's name again. Hizumura's face turned tense, and Yuichi suggested that if he could not stop Kaori alone, why not ask for someone else's help? Hizumura turned to him with a shocked face, repeating, "Someone else's help." Yuichi whispered to him that Fuji's best friend seemed to know their situation and that this person was also the one Hizumura had been talking about lately. Hizumura, shocked, asked if Yuichi was talking about Shimada. Yuichi confirmed that he was. When they saw Sei and Shiho talking, Hizumura suddenly shouted, "No way," which drew Sei and Shiho's attention. Hizumura panicked and shouted again that there was no way in hell, insisting that he would die for real. He thought to himself that Sei was avoiding him right now and wondered how Yuichi could do this to him. He started to run, but Yuichi begged him to help, saying that this was the only thing he was asking for and that no one else knew about it. Hizumura insisted that Shimada was definitely impossible. Yuichi asked why, saying it was a good suggestion. Hisamura sat in frustration, thinking about what he should do and whether he should tell Yuichi about his confession to Sei-chan. Yuichi sat down in front of him and continued to beg him. Hisamura thought nervously that Yuichi was bad at lying to people, and that if his feelings were revealed during class, it was very possible Sei-chan would be bothered. He thought he would not be able to salvage his disgusting confession and wondered desperately what he should do. Sei then walked up to them and, blushing, asked if Hisamura had just said something about her. Hisamura's face turned tense as he thought about Sei-chan. Yuichi quickly greeted Shimada, saying it was great timing. Hisamura thought that if she was willing to come and talk to him, it meant she at least did not hate him, but then he noticed her turning away while blushing. Shocked, he thought that she did not want to look at him at all. Sei, still blushing, asked Yuichi if there was anything she could help with. Yuichi replied that there was, but it was something he did not want anyone else to hear, and he asked if she had time after school. Sei asked if it was about Shiho and him. Yuichi confirmed that it was, explaining that they had a small problem. Sei, still blushing, said she understood and suggested staying in the classroom after school, but she suddenly blushed even harder. Yuichi, surprised, asked what was wrong. Sei, flustered, said nothing and, after seeing Hisamura's face, shouted that the classroom was too much and quickly suggested they meet at the school gate instead. She ran off, leaving Yuichi wondering if something had happened to her. Hisamura replied vaguely that, who knew, while thinking to himself if Sei had just freaked out when she saw him. Blushing, he wondered if she remembered how he confessed to her yesterday. He smiled happily at the thought, but quickly shook his head, telling himself not to get carried away, since embarrassment from the confession might also carry a negative meaning. Yuichi then suddenly remembered something and apologized to Tsukasa, saying he needed to be at the basketball club's meeting after school. Hisamura, shocked, asked what he meant. Yuichi asked him to tell Shimada about their situation after school. Hisamura, angry, threatened to beat him up. Yuichi, confused, asked why. Hisamura thought bitterly if Yuichi knew how awkward the confession had been. The scene then shifted. On the school grounds, Hisamura, with a tense face, muttered that this was definitely not the time for that. In his mind, he shouted that he should be happy to talk to Sei-chan alone, but first things first, he did not want to start a conversation under this truckload of awkwardness. He thought he could not stop thinking about it. He asked himself what he was even thinking. Sei-chan was waiting for him. When he saw Sei at the school gate, he thought he just had to take his chances. Clicking his tongue in frustration, he cursed Yuichi. He approached her nervously, apologizing for making her wait. Sei turned to him with a blushing smile and greeted him. Hisamura muttered the word beautiful, and Sei, blushing harder, reacted in surprise. Hisamura panicked, realizing he had said it out loud. He quickly apologized for bothering her and asked if she was free. Sei stammered out that she was, then turned and asked about Shigemoto. Hisamura, with a tense face, replied vaguely about this and that. Sei, confused, pointed out that even though Yuichi was the one who called them out, he was not there. Hisamura apologized again. Sei muttered in frustration, wondering what on earth Yuichi was thinking. Blushing, she asked if that meant it was just the two of them. Hisamura called out her name in surprise, and Sei, still blushing, quickly corrected herself, saying that was what Shigemoto was talking about. Hisamura confirmed with a nod. Sei then said it was about helping Shiho on Sunday. Hisamura repeated that it was about helping Shiho on Sunday. Sei, holding her bag and blushing, addressed Hisamura again and suggested that there was a cafe nearby where they could talk. Shocked, Hisamura muttered in surprise, but Sei, flustered, shouted that it was going to be a long story, so they should not talk while standing up. She hesitated and asked, still blushing, if it was no good. Hisamura quickly reassured her, saying of course it was okay, and thought to himself with relief, thanking Yuichi and being glad he was not there. The scene shifted, and Sei was drinking a cold coffee while blushing. Hisamura kept staring at her, which made Sei flustered as she asked what he was staring at while blushing. Hisamura responded with an A, and Sei immediately said that she knew it did not suit her, explaining that she had a sweet tooth after all. Hisamura, however, said with a straight face that it was not the case and told Sei that she was the cutest. Sei blushed harder and replied with an, I see, thank you, while blushing, and Hisamura thought to himself that she was ultra cute. He also thought that since Sei-chan liked sweets, and because she was usually portrayed as a cool, composed character, he was glad he could see this new side of her. Hisamura then asked if it was good, which made Sei shock blush and react with a sudden Hisamura shouted her surname, Shimada, and apologized while asking if she was all right. He stood up as Sei started coughing and said she was okay, but in between her coughs, she asked why Hisamura was calling her that way. Hisamura admitted that, honestly, that was how he had been calling her in his heart, and he thought to himself that he was not lying. Sei blushed and replied with, "I see." Hisamura then brought up that yesterday's confession was kind of just an on-the-spot thing. Sei reacted again with "I see," while shaking and sipping the coffee. Hisamura apologized and said he should not just call her by her first name out of the blue, and that he would call her Shimada from now on. Sei replied that it was not like she really minded. Hisamura asked if she was sure, and Sei confirmed but admitted that it was embarrassing, so he could only do it when they were alone. Hisamura was shocked, thinking to himself to calm down, and asked if that was a roundabout way of saying yes to his confession. Sei was stunned, then blushed hard, stood up, and asked what gave him that idea. Hisamura explained that since she said he could call her by her first name when they were alone, in other words, that meant something. Sei immediately shouted that she only allowed him to call her by her first name and had not said yes to his confession. Hisamura quickly said he understood and apologized. Sei then said that even though he could call her by her first name, the answer to his confession was before Hisamura cut in, saying, in other words, and crying while saying it meant if she was denying all of that. Sei quickly replied that it was not what she meant either. She then gripped her hand, sat down, and apologized, admitting that she had not rejected his confession. She explained that it was more like she was thinking about it positively for now. Hisamura blushed and asked what she had just said. Sei shock blushed and said they should talk about this later, right? Hisamura insisted on her words, but Sei cut him off again, to which Hisamura said he understood. He thought to himself that somehow Sei had just said something very nice to him and that he was so curious. Sei then shifted the conversation, saying that, in other words, Tojoin knew about Shiho and Shigemoto's date, so Hisamura wanted her to cooperate to make sure they would not be disturbed. She asked if that was what he meant, with a tense expression. Hisamura confirmed that was how it would be, but explained it was just Yuichi's personal request and that it was okay for her to say no. He thought that he felt bad for Yuichi, but he did not intend to take sides between Tojoin-san and Fuji's. He thought about how he liked the love triangle between Tojoin-san, Yuichi, and Fujize in Ojama. Most importantly, he reminded himself that the original Tsukasa Hisamura was on good terms with Tojoin-san and supported her instead of getting in the way. That was why, if Sei-chan said no, he was ready to persuade Yuichi by force if necessary. Sei said she would help, and Hisamura asked if she was sure. Sei explained that Shiho was mustering up her courage to confess her feelings, so they could not let anyone disturb her. Hisamura thought to himself that he was in love and that, as expected of Sei-chan, she really cared about her best friend, and that she was so cool he would fall in love with her. Sei asked if he had any plan for that, and Hisamura reacted nervously. Sei reminded him that they were dealing with Tojoin. Hisamura admitted that honestly he did not think they could stop her at all, because they had no chance of winning against one of Japan's leading conglomerates if she used her full power. However, he thought they might be able to turn the tide if Yuichi stayed at his house the day before. Sei asked what he meant, and Hisamura thought about how in the original version, Tojoin-san threw a wrench into Fujize and Yuichi's date. He recalled that in the original, the date was successfully hidden from Tojoin-san, who only found out about it by accident on the day of the actual date. At that time, Tojoin-san had not known it was going to be a date, but when she was in Yuichi's house, he panicked and tried to cover it up, which made her suspicious. After tailing them, she finally saw them on the date, which turned into a chaotic rom-com situation. Hisamura assumed that Tojoin would still try to stop them as in the original, so the plan was to start the date from his house. He reasoned that with how Tojoin-san was, she would probably be keeping an eye on Yuichi's house since morning, so maybe they could buy some time with that. He admitted to himself that it probably would not work if they were not following the original anymore, but they had to try anything at this point. Sei asked if that was so, then suggested she could get Shiho to go from her house as well. Hisamura said there was no need for that, and it should be fine for Shiho to go from her own house. He explained that Tojoin probably still did not know who Yuichi was going on a date with yet, and that right now Tojoin was just suspicious because she knew Yuichi had some secret plans on Sunday. Sei blushed and asked if that meant Tojoin also did not know the location of the date. Hisamura confirmed that it was possible she did not even know it was a date yet. Sei then said that if that was the case, could they not just prevent Tojoin from tailing them and call it a day? Hisamura, with a tense expression, admitted that was right. He thought that everything would be fine as long as Tojoin-san did not find out Yuichi was at his house. If they could keep that hidden, they would win once they sent Yuichi off to the date location. Sei remarked that it looked like there was not a lot she could do if that was the plan. Hisamura admitted the same and apologized for wasting her time. Sei, however, told him with a smile that she was always there to help if he needed advice or if there was something she could do for Shiho, and that he should not hesitate to tell her. Hisamura saw her smile and thought to himself with excitement that he loved her. The scene then shifted, showing that it was dark outside and they were out of the cafe. Hisamura noted that they were running really late and asked where Sei-chan was going. Sei said to the station, then paused. Hisamura asked what was wrong, and Sei, blushing, told him not to laugh. Hisamura assured her he would not and asked again what was wrong. Sei blushed and admitted that the latest volume of the manga she was reading came out that day. Hisamura was stunned and then started to laugh, which made Sei blush harder and reminded him that she told him not to laugh. Hisamura smiled and apologized, saying Sei-chan was so cute that he could not help it. Sei shouted for him not to make fun of her. Hisamura then looked at her and said that since they were there anyway, they should stop by the bookshop because she wanted to buy the new release. Sei asked if he was okay with it, and Hisamura, with a smile, said it was more like an apology for keeping her out late. More importantly, he thought going on a bookshop date with Sei-chan would be very fun. There was a pause, and Hisamura, embarrassed, said it was probably too sudden and waved his hand nervously, thinking he might have made her uncomfortable by that sudden move. Sei whispered for him to follow her and walked away. Hisamura reacted in surprise, calling out to her. Sei turned while blushing and asked if he would come to the bookshop with her.
By the way, if you enjoyed the video, maybe consider liking and subscribing, pretty please?